Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel, where we delve into the mind of a villain. In this entry, we'll be taking a look at Obadiah Stane, the villain in the first Iron Man movie, as portrayed by Jeff Bridges. Obadiah was driven by two main motivators, his greed and his resentment against Tony Stark. The combination of these two motivators revealed his evil nature, which he keeps concealed for most of the film. Like a puppet master hiding behind the stage, it was Obadiah who was pulling the strings behind much of Tony's misfortune in the film. We first learn of Obadiah's role in standing in for Howard Stark upon his sudden passing. As Tony was too young then, Obadiah took the reins of the Stark Empire. Considering that the company appears to be doing well, it would stand to reason that Obadiah at least kept the company afloat for decades. However, when Tony was of age, he returned to helm the company, replacing Obadiah. It is here that Obadiah develops his resentment against Tony. This is indicated at the end when Obadiah mentions that he built the company for nothing and that he has held Tony up for 30 years. It's likely that Obadiah feels that he has earned his position, while Tony simply has it by virtue of his name. Perhaps he feels overshadowed by Tony, a much smarter and more charismatic leader. With Tony's return, the limelight has shifted away from Obadiah. He has reached the height of his career growth. He has come to terms with the fact that he has to play second fiddle to Tony for the rest of his life. And for someone as ambitious and greedy as Obadiah, that is a situation he cannot accept. He attempts to remedy this situation when he makes arrangements with the terrorist group known as the 10 Rings to kill Tony Stark. But his plan goes sideways when the unexpected happens. Tony survives and is taken captive. It is here that Obadiah makes one of his many mistakes in the film. The 10 Rings demanded a higher payment when they realized who it actually was they were contracted to kill. Given that Tony was not executed by the 10 Rings, we can conclude that Obadiah ignored their request. If he had simply given in to their request and dug deeper into his wallet, perhaps he would have clinched his goal of eliminating Tony. And while we're at it, leaving incriminating video evidence of himself in the company's ghost drives and not deleting it was another mistake. Things take another turn when Tony returns. Then the unthinkable happens. Tony decides to change the direction of the company and discontinue their weapons manufacturing, threatening the continued success of the company. It is here that Obadiah's greed and selfishness is displayed. Tony explains his change of heart, telling Obadiah that he doesn't wish for his weapons to end up in the hands of terrorists. Obadiah dismisses this notion with the claim that they're ironmongers. In his eyes, he has no issue with profiting from the suffering of others, even if it means spreading death and destruction. It is this greed and callousness that causes him to deal under the table, to continue supplying Stark weapons to the 10 Rings and Golmora. But what enables this greed is Obadiah's low opinion of the poorer nations. In his subsequent meeting with the leader of the 10 Rings, he cites their lack of technology in this part of the world as their bane and gloats over it. When Tony escalates his activities as Iron Man and starts destroying his weapons, Obadiah has to resort to more drastic means. Now he does the dirty work himself and takes Tony's arc reactor by force. He makes another fatal flaw in thinking that removing the arc reactor would be fatal to Tony. In reality, Tony would still survive for at least another few days before the shrapnel reaches his heart. Obadiah having Tony in his grasp but not killing him is the deus ex machina of the film. Defeat was snatched from the jaws of victory. While Obadiah resents Tony and wishes to eliminate him, it appears that they once shared an actual bond, as seen by how intimate they are at various points of the film, with Tony mentioning that he even bought Obadiah pajamas at the start. It's likely that they have somewhat of a surrogate father-son relationship, with Tony looking up to Obadiah as a parental figure from the years where he stood in for the company. He is also one of the remaining few people who was closely associated with his actual father, Howard. But eventually, Obadiah must have felt that Tony was an obstacle to his advancement and decided that his wealth and power would take precedence over his relationship with Tony. It is a testament to the duplicity of Obadiah that he could hide his resentment of Tony for so long while on the surface he appears to be friends with him. Now he sees Tony as a golden goose, with one last golden egg to give in the form of his Iron Man technology. Obadiah has no innovations of his own, but he merely takes what others have created and uses it for his own gain. A line in the film reveals this approach. He mentions to a paralyzed Tony, "Do you think that just because you have an idea that it belongs to you?" Obadiah sees Tony as selfish for not sharing his Iron Man tech and sees himself as doing the world a favor by creating a new generation of weapons. But eventually, with nowhere to hide, Obadiah has to do the dirty work himself, although at this point he is already defeated in terms of his goal. Stark's throne will never be his, given that his criminal activities were brought to light. His defeat at the hands of Tony is somewhat ironic, given that his suit was more advanced, while Tony was limited by an outdated arc reactor. At the end, Obadiah Stane was a greedy capitalist, profiting from the sufferings of others. His jealousy and his greed drove him to betray those closest to him, all in the name of acquiring more wealth and power. So what do you think of Obadiah Stane, folks? Let me know in the comments, along with other characters you'd like to see here.